Evening, everyone. We'll start our meeting tonight. Pitch it for Bethany, who could make it. We'll start off with the annual organizational meeting agenda. We'd like to turn it over at this time to the chairman of the nominating committee, Mr. Langio.
So we have a decision. Motion is for the 2023-2024 slate of officers. At the June board meeting, there was duly appointed nominating committee and in accordance with the bylaws of board of trustees presented the nominations for the slate of officers for 2023-2024. The chair of the nominating committee recommends to the board of trustees the following slate of officers for 2023-2024. Chair, Bethany; Vice Chair, Ed; Treasurer, Cassidy; Secretary, Maria. That's in the form of a motion.
Second.
For the second by Tybee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Hearing none, motion passed. Thank you. Make a motion to adjourn. Motion by Roberta, second by Tybee. All those in favor? Opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to our business meeting. Any public comments tonight from the union? No public comments, thank you. Educational showcase, I'd like to turn it over this time to Dr. Truckermiller, who will give us a update on the Science Lab Phase 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would love to. However, we just received our certificate of occupancy, so the spaces still aren't ready for you to view. So instead, what I'm going to do is talk about our capital project planning study. And I'm going to I know some of you know this stuff ad nauseum, but for some of you who are perhaps newer with the board, may not be entirely familiar with how capital budgeting and capital planning is. And so I'm just going to give a really quick high-level overview of that process, and then I'm going to talk about this document that we should have in place. So as you know, our capital projects rely on a separate capital budget, and that budget operates roughly in parallel in terms of approvals with our operating budget. So we, as a college, we are not allowed to bond. Any public entities have that capability to either raise their tax levy or bond specifically for capital projects. That's not something that community colleges in the state can do. So we're reliant on really 2 or 3 sources of funding, 2 primary sources of funding, one of which is the state. And the state, in their process of developing their budget, requires a local match. They don't care what that match is, as long as it's not state dollars being matched to state dollars. So the most common match that we use is our sponsor contribution match from, again, this is separate from our operating budget. Right now, I'm going through this process with Fulton County. Earlier in the year, I went through this with Montgomery County. We present to them a slate of projects. We'll talk about some of those projects. And then they commit to funding those projects contingent upon both counties participating and the state providing a match. Some of our projects in the past and present and future also include matches from the foundation. So the foundation will raise funds specifically for a capital project, and that can be in the mix as well. We can also, on occasion, match federal dollars with state dollars for capital projects. They allowed us to do that with a small portion of the COVID money, and we do have a couple of small projects that we use that for. Our 2 sponsor counties have 2 very distinct philosophies when it comes to funding capital projects. Montgomery County typically issues bonds for capital projects, not just specific to the college, but in general. Fulton County pays cash. So if they don't have the cash available to them, they are loath to issue any sort of bonds. They are loath to go into any sort of debt whatsoever. And so, over the last decade or so, we've had an agreement. It's not a legal agreement. It's not a contractual agreement. We've had just sort of an understanding that the counties are comfortable funding about $1 million worth of projects a year, which means $250,000 from Fulton County, $250,000 from Montgomery County, and $500,000 from the state. So our challenge, and I'll talk about that with this, is to come up with ways to deal with our projects that fit within those parameters. The other difference in philosophy or approach that they have is Fulton County takes a 3-year approach to their capital planning. Montgomery County takes a 6-year look. So when we prepare our requests for each county, we have to think about it in terms of those timeframes. Then with the state process, there's multiple players involved because this is New York State and we love to have multiple layers. So there's the SUNY Office of Capital Facilities, which takes an initial look at our proposed projects, and assuming that they are in agreement with those projects, they'll advance them into the division of budget for consideration in the upcoming state budget. And then once that budget is approved, then DASNY gets involved, the Dormitory Authority of the state of New York gets involved because they're the actual entity that issues bonds for the state match. So once we get all the way through the approval process of our proposed projects, and then there's funding available at the state, then we have to start off over with financing the projects and filling out financing applications and getting really a second round of approval for those. So we're actually going through that process right now with the projects that were approved in the state budget this year in May. And then our projects for next year that we're proposing have a deadline of the end of September for the SUNY Office of Capital Facilities. And then really by the end of the calendar year, we have to have commitment from the 2 counties on those projects as well. So those things are all happening in as we speak, and it seems like it never ends. We do have a master plan steering committee, which had representatives from each county and from the trustees as well as the administration. We haven't had a meeting in a while, but Jim has represented us for a number of years on that committee. And we're trying to get the band back together to kind of see where we are. One of the projects that was funded by the counties and the state this year is the capital planning study, which really informs our capital projects for the next 5 years. And what you'll see in this, and you can take this home and study it and memorize it and prepare for the quiz that we'll give you next week or next month. But you'll see that most of the projects that we have within this document are all about deferred maintenance and all about infrastructure, because with a 60-year-old physical plant, things are aging and needing to be addressed. And you'll see, if you go to page 3, you'll see pictures of some of the exciting things that we're working on, like electric distribution panels that are being eaten from the ground up from corrosion because of the water infiltration in buildings. So you'll see, fire alarm panels from 1969 that haven't been replaced but are scheduled to be replaced. And then, paving, roofs, all the things that we don't really like to spend money on, but we have to spend money on. And then we really do rely on our sponsors to help us with, because it's difficult for Leslie to go out and ask somebody to help us pay for a roof or a parking lot. I'm sure if you could find somebody, if anybody could, it's Leslie. But we we like to go to them with things that are more programmatic related and things like the turf stadium that we know the county sponsors aren't going to be all that excited about. So, you know, the process that we went through this year was working with JMZ. They hired a number of engineers from different specialties to really give a site conditions report and recommendations on where we need to go in terms of addressing these deferred maintenance items. And I'll tell you that having this document really made the conversations with the counties go pretty smoothly this year. Because not only did they pay for it, it isn't me sitting in front of them saying, you know what, we really need to do this. This is, you know, experts and engineers saying, you know, you really need to replace that electrical panel before a fire breaks out. Or you really need to replace that electrical or the fire alarm panel that's next to the electrical panel. You know that there's a fire. So that was a pretty easy conversation to have with them. They're still not necessarily moved by allowing projects that are greater than $1 million. Even we discussed with them the additional expense involved with chopping up some of these projects into bite-sized pieces. You know, the science labs that we were going to go look at tonight, that was a 3-phase project over 7 years that probably cost about 40% more than it needed to because of the approach of we're only going to give you $1 million a year toward these projects. That is the reality that we live in. And so with that in mind, we have created a series of projects that begin to tackle some of our deferred maintenance issues in $1 million increments that we can take us longer to address them, but it's progress. So.
Right. Is the $1 million hold, is that really based on Fulton County's lack of desire to bond? Because if you're bonding, it doesn't really matter.
Honestly, all I can say is, you know, that's a question for the Fulton County trustees to take the Fulton County Board of Supervisors because. Yeah.
So I might wonder is, and you probably already thought about this and why it can't happen, but could Montgomery County bond the whole thing and have Fulton County make them hold it over a period of years?
Anything's possible.
40% is a lot of money,
It is.
so.
It is. So I will tell you just from going to Montgomery County legislative meetings, they are considering their own philosophy of how they go out and fund these projects, and they expressed their desire to slow down on even their own bonding. And I think, as a matter of fact, the projects that they've agreed to for us this year, they're not bonding for them. But you know, anything's possible.
Yeah.
And the state doesn't care how the local match is made up. And we're, you know, we're not the only community college that has 2 sponsors. And, you know, not every one of those situations is it even a 50-50 split between the 2 counties. And some of them don't proportional. It's the philosophy and the approach that the 2 counties agreed to, you know, 60 years ago, and they've stuck to it pretty carefully. So anyway, again, we wanted you to have a copy of this because this will help you understand, you know, at least in terms of maintenance. And toward the back of this document, there are, you know, it goes into the site conditions and some of the things that we're not able to tackle in the next 5 years, but that we really need to keep on our radar. You know, the Evans Library is a good example of that. That's a project we wanted to tackle, but because of the amount of asbestos in that building, the size of that building, it typically, you know, there really isn't anything you can do that fits within the parameters that the counties have made for us. So
Excellent report, though. A picture definitely is worth 1,000 words.
it is, yeah. Because, like I said, it made the conversation much easier this year and before that. Despite some grumbling from some of our elected leaders about funding the study, they seem to be pleased with the product. So both counties have asked me to come and give a separate presentation just on this document. And we, outside of me asking them for money for this year and using this as my source, is that we would like to review the entire document with you in a separate meeting. So we're working to schedule that with both parties.
Would that include details of the 40%? You know what I mean, additional expense because of the process? Is there a way to add that to that conversation, I guess?
I will tell you that it is part of every conversation that I have with them. And, you know, as I said, that they're unmoved by the additional expense incurred. Because their attitude is, yes, we can afford it today. We can. Not going to commit to you any more than we're comfortable drawing out of our checking account right now. So even if that means that we're going to have to pay more over a longer period of time, they view that as
That's just their way.
They're worried about the taxpayers.
They did that at the county jail for years. They burned prisoners out and it cost them more money than if they would have built a prison right off the bat.
Thanks, sir. I'm all set.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the chairman's report. First and foremost, on behalf of the board of trustees, I would offer Leslie Lancy our sincere sympathy on the passing of your mom. If there's any board members that would like to donate, is there anything special that we could donate to on behalf of your mom?
Well, you all sent flowers already. The board of trustees sent me flowers, which are beautiful. So, no, I'm actually earmarking all the money to the church fields that we're taking in here, right now. So, but thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to a motion for the president's salary and benefits. In accordance with the contract between the Board of Trustees and Fulton-Montgomery Community College, Dr. Gregory Truckermiller, president, and evaluation was completed by the board at its June 23rd meeting, June 2023 meeting. Upon completion of the evaluation, the board established a salary and benefits for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. The chair of the board recommends that the board modify the employment contract with Dr. Truckermiller by eliminating paragraph 9, car allowance, and adding the total annual car allowance to the base salary. The chair further recommends that the board approve a 2% salary increase for Dr. Truckermiller on the modified base salary, 2022-2023 salary, plus the total amount of the car allowance for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. All the provisions of the contract between the Board of Trustees and Fulton-Montgomery Community College and Dr. Truckermiller remain as written in the contract, and that is in form of a motion. Second by Mr. Langelo. Any discussion on the motion? Not all those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion passed. With that concludes the chairman's report. And we'll move on to the president's report.
At their most recent meeting, county board supervisors issued proclamations recognition of both our men's and women's basketball teams, which was nice. Would have been even nicer if they told us they were doing that, so that we could have, the coaches there. And, but anyway, it was a nice gesture and we appreciate it. And Tuesday, Montgomery County held their public hearing and vote on our operating budget, and that was approved. No one spoke in the public hearing, and the budget was approved. But Fulton County has their public hearing scheduled and their vote scheduled for August 14th. the SUNY deadline, so Chastity is working feverishly on the SUNY deadline of August 15th. So one day after the formal capital budget into SUNY. And then the SUNY Board of Trustees is expected to approve the budget in September. I mentioned to you in my reports that as part of the New York State budget this year, SUNY was awarded $75 million in transformation funds, which they took $15 million off the top and allocated $60 million to the campuses. Each campus got roughly $1 million. And each of those allocations is restricted in the use of funds. So the two main areas that you can spend the money is on workforce development, which, read into that. Any of our credit programs, for example, and the other, you can spend up to 50% in some other areas that we're still trying to figure out what they mean, but really what they want you to do is use funds to enhance programs in ways that you aren't able to do. You're not supposed to be supplanting your institutional funds. And so we have a team together working at how we'll apply these, and these are one-time funds. Again, these are not recurring funds. The other area that you could spend this money on, and you could spend all of it on, is the implementation of the CUNY ASAP program, which is something that they feel has been very successful in CUNY, but CUNY also pays more. So our assessment of that is that it's not sustainable. We could certainly put the program up $1 million this year with $1 million. Next year we have to close the program because we wouldn't have it. So we're focusing more on how we can refresh some of the equipment in some of our programs and have a meaningful impact that way. Our nursing program also received, as part of the governor's legislation that ended up being approved by the Senate and Assembly on nursing simulation. They also assigned some dollars to that, and because we have an existing sim lab, we received $22,000 to help with our efforts in that area. So we have our searches underway for Dean of Academic Affairs. We have our first finalist on campus tomorrow, and our second finalist is for the year next week. Also working through our finalists for Associate Dean for Enrollment Management. We've got interviews underway for our opportunity programs, our accessibility services coordinator, and our financial aid advisor right now. So working through to get some staffing back up. I mentioned to you recently there have been data breaches reported by the National Student Clearinghouse and by TIA and CREF, both of which potentially impact us as well as all of our sister institutions. Right now, we're just waiting to hear if any of our data was actually impacted. And we have completed the mandatory reporting that we're required to do with the Attorney General, the State Education Department, and the U.S. Department of Education. So we've done what we had to do in terms of reporting the suspected breach. We've also opened a claim with our cyber insurance company in the event that we actually have any sort of exposure, which again, we're still waiting to find out. So it wasn't our breach, but it was our data. And so there's some potential impact there. And with that, I will conclude my remarks and answer any questions that may come up.
Any questions?
Would that potentially require communication to them?
Correct. Yeah, again, the question mark is, since the breach was actually at the clearinghouse, is it the clearinghouse's responsibility to notify our students? Is it our responsibility to notify our students? So, yeah, and the TIA CREF is employees, but same thing. Is it TIA CREF that's going to do that? Is it us that's going to do that? Yeah.
Chair, I didn't know if we had to approve the minutes for the prior meeting.
Pardon?
I didn't know if we wanted to approve the minutes of the prior meeting.
Oh, yeah. We'll do that. Have a motion to approve the June 15th, 2023 meeting. Motion by Roberta, seconded by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. One other thing, the mini retreat will be postponed until next time. So when we're done here, we'll all be able to finish our chicken up there. We'll move on to the student trustees report. He's not here, so we'll move on to the foundation report. Trustee Gazi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Johnson Hospital Foundation granted us with $37,500 that we submit the request for upgrading the CNA lab. And we are going to use this money for upgrading the equipment. Next CNA certificate program will be offered in fall, and usually 2 to 3 times we offer this course. Another scholarship that we have is from Margaret Collier. $500 is available for the student that they participate in this program. Next item is Fifth Friday series held Friday on June 30th. And they have a good group, 40 people attended, and breakfast was served in Allen House. And panelists, they were Dr. William Crankshaw, superintendent of school in Johnstown, as well as Adam Heroth, superintendent of school for Oppenheim, Frida, as well as St. Johnsville. Sean Fadil, they call it Fadil, thank you. CEO and president of Nathan Tower. Jeffrey Methven, CEO and president for St. Mary's Hospital Healthcare, as well as Ann Bowles, Executive Director, Fulton-Montgomery Regional Chamber of Commerce. They were there. Dr. Jerry Ryan, one of the foundation member, which chairperson for this series, was facilitator, and the discussion was about after effects of COVID, schools, small businesses, and as well as healthcare. Excuse me. The foundation support nursing program to providing financial support for creating a Zen space, which is going to be in their nursing lab. They can relax, they can meditate, and they can do Tai Chi, and they provide them with yoga pillow, big screen, music, and they studies show that it affects to improve their success. Next item, annual distinguished and alumni dinner, which is going to be November 2nd. Would you please mark your calendar for it? It will in Johnston Holiday Inn, along with the Clock Tower Award and foundation begin to accept the nomination for Clock Tower Award is giving to someone who has been philanthropic to the foundation as well as the local community. Foundation is waiting to see about the turf field proposal forwarded by Senator Gillibrand to the Senate Appropriation Committee. Notification it will occur at the end of July, and foundation is going to continue to strategize to for the potential donor. There's another page in case, any of us, we wanna, give gift to the, foundation of our college, as well as if somebody asks us some question regarding that, we can be prepared for that. There are, several ways we can, do that. If anybody is interested to Raoul Theater, each, um, each chair is for 350. You can purchase one, two, or the whole row if it's available. Annual appeal, this is another way that we can donate money to use for a specific project or determined by foundation what they want to use it for. Oh, I'm so sorry. Scholarship. We have two different kind of, two separate way. One of them is pass through when the dollar amount established is given annually to the student selected. The other one is endowed, which the minimum money that the person has to put down is $10,000. And this, any kind of scholarship is gonna be number one, determined that they have some criteria by the foundation and financial office, aid office director, and they're going to see who's going to get it. And next way we can, or somebody can give some gift to the foundation is through sponsorship through golf. And between $250 to $10,000. And of course, we are not going to say no if they want to give us more money. And the proceed from this tournament is going to use for college and high school scholarship and foundation annually. More than 100 people, they've been awarded by this particular and target fundraising, meaning if we have capital project like multi-use surface athletic field, we need the foundation need to raise $2.5 million, and state is going to match it. And there are also another way, just naming opportunity for people if it depends on the size of their donation or pledge. That's how foundation determine they're going to name which area for that person. If there's no question, with that I conclude my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tabe. Are there any questions for Tabe? If not, we'll move on to finance. Trustee Winsman.
In your packet, there's two expense graphs included, one that provides expense and budget data by major function, and another that provides expense and contracted services category. The graphs compare data for fiscal year 2021-22 to fiscal year 22-23. The expense summary budget versus the actual for the period of 9/1/22 to 6/30/23, which is 83% of our fiscal year. To date, actual expenses and encumbrances are 73% of budget. The expense detail by department provides by department a detailed comparison of our expenses and encumbrances to budget for the period 9/1/22 to 6/30/23. Again, 83%. The finance statement for the period of 9/1/22 to 5/31/23, percent of our fiscal year. The revenue includes billing activity through 5/31 for the fall 22, winter, spring 23, and summer 23 semesters. This represents 108.3% of the tuition budget, while expenses incurred represents 9 months or 64% of the budget. The budget transfer report summarizes the budget transfers completed for the month. And the contract report summarizes contracts signed during June of 2023. And there were no grants to report. If there's no questions, that concludes my report.
Have any questions? None? Thank you, trustee Wiseman. Buildings and grounds with trustee Lanza.
We don't have too much to emphasize, except we'll just make a note that Science Lab Phase 3 has received a certificate of occupancy. And the capital projects committee will be meeting shortly. That concludes our report.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Lanza? If not, we'll move on to academic affairs. Dr. Putman is not here.
I just bring one highlight from the report, actually a couple more things. You'll notice in the academic affairs report, there's discussion of several new workforce development grants that the college has either applied for or has received. Again, that's turned to be we've been very, very fortunate in the grant dollars that we've been able to acquire over the last year. The team is still continuing to do excellent work in bringing those dollars. We have a new one that was submitted and while we haven't received the official word that it's been granted, all indications are that we are going to receive the award from the SUNY and persons with developmental disabilities grant that was submitted recently. And this is all about working with our local employers, specifically Lexington and Liberty, on upskilling the direct support professionals and getting them certification. And it's developing some micro credentials to help them do that. And, Julie Lind has been at the forefront. She's at our human services and our addiction services faculty member. She's been very active in a number of these grant projects, but this one in particular. And we also have an effort aimed at enhancing our HVAC program. As you probably know, a lot of the standards in HVAC are changing, and I think January of this year and next year, a lot of the old refrigerants that have been used and a lot of the old devices are no longer going to be available. So we need to make sure that our program is working with some of the latest equipment. And while we've been received generous donations from the industry, there's still a lot of things that we need to pick up to make sure that we're training technicians with the latest requirements. And the other recent workforce development thing that we wanted to just is our, we've talked a little bit about this, but our emerging technician program. We've been doing a lot of work on developing promotional and recruitment opportunities for those, whether those for videos or visits to the schools. So we're focusing on that. We're again going to look at, with our transformation that I mentioned earlier, we're going to look at making some updates. Cybersecurity, we used a little bit of that money last year, a lot of that money last year for cybersecurity. It's incredibly expensive. We're going to use some more of that funding for that. We're going to look at our tech program has a lot of things in it. A lot of things that we purchased about 10 years ago, some of which are still great, some of which need to be replaced. So there's some enhancements we need to do in that area in terms of equipment. And the same thing with our allied health programs as well. Just there's a continuous need for that. And while we're looking at every opportunity that comes out there, and we've been very fortunate, it also becomes an administrative headache too for all these different grantors and their specific requirements and keeping track of all of that. It's an absolute necessity to tell the environment that we're in. So that, can you answer any questions?
The program for staff working with people with developmental disabilities, is that a state certification or is that a micro?
So the certification is a national certification. the micro-credential is something that's recognized by the state university, but
Yeah.
the curriculum leads toward national, and I don't know, do you know the acronym, it's NAS.
I don't know either, so.
You know, but, you know, it is a national, certification standard.
So is that a path to a higher rate of pay for individuals working at the ARCs?
Typically, that is true, yes. And I think that's the incentive that they're putting out
Yeah,
there.
that's
is to
great.
Pursue that. Not only that, the grant pays for the cost. So there should be a cost to the student pursuing this, and then there should be a carrot for them at the end as well.
That's encouraging because we have a lot of people in that workforce, so, and it's pretty flat workforce, so having a way to bump up the responsibility and education and that is probably a very effective tool, so. And my second question is with cybersecurity and the importance of cybersecurity and the explosive growth of cybersecurity as an industry, is there another SUNY institution that is focusing on cybersecurity? Is there another school that we should be looking at for how strong we should be stepping on the gas in the future?
So there are both 2-year programs and 4-year programs other than us. One thing that's, and we are looking at the curriculum, we are looking at what they do. One thing that's unique in what we are the only SUNY institution that has is the idea of cyber range, which is, you know, their take on cybersecurity monitoring and defense. So they have not only the hardware portion of it, but they also have both credit and curriculum that feeds off of the cyber range. So that's what makes us unique. Suffolk, for example, has a cybersecurity program that's focused on, there's another national certification. They're one of 2, I think, SUNY institutions that has that certification pathway. So we're looking at, do we do both? Do we do?
I just put my CRG hat on, thinking about what we have available for workforce and growth for workforce. It's a cybersecurity facility could be anywhere from Timbuktu to Long Island. So, and we're certainly a lot less costly to do business here than Suffolk County. So you look at something like the Tri-Technology Park, we're trying to repurpose there, and it's power there for someone that had to have a lot of computing power. Developing a workforce might be the carrot to developing facility here that did that. So that's what I'm.
Yeah, and that's what we hope, that this is, you know, this is.
Catalyst.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Chuckamiller. We'll move on to student affairs with trustee Salmack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Jackie Snyder for a wonderful work with the college and the students of Fulton-Montgomery Community College. I know that we wish her the best in her new position. And on that note, the Office of Admissions has been doing unbelievable work. I have some things to tell you about Selena Barber, the admissions counselor, and Gabrielle Albrecht. They're doing wonderful work at the college. And we talked a little bit about some of the stuff that they've been doing. And July 20th was the SUNY FMCC night at the Amsterdam Mohawks game. All high school graduates received free admission to the game. Announcements were made throughout the game promoting SUNY FMCC as the community's college, which is very nice for everybody to have that feeling. Even the adults who have children coming up, looking at schools, with the cost of schools, a big topic in the country now. I think this is really a good time for a lot of people to make a choice for a great college like this. The admissions team is working on converting accepted applicants into registered students, which is wonderful. The enrollment initiatives, the team is also currently participating in the following SUNY enrollment initiatives: international recruitment,
SUNY match, SUNY transfer match, EOP match, community college direct admissions, and centralized EOP financial review. There's a number of, in your packet, you'll see a number of fall 2023 admission events. They've been hosting monthly events that started in May to promote fall enrollment. Social media posts, mailing, emails, text messages to get the word out about these events, which is really wonderful. It's a lot of work too. There are strategic goals that are being talked about right now in your packet. Adapt, connect, and leverage. The goal 1 is partnerships. Goal 3 is equitable student experience. Goal 3 is enrollment, management, and retention. And goal 4 is transform. In the athletics area, recruitment continues this summer for all 4 teams. 9 student athletes received academic all region and will be put forth for American all American. Student engagement at the Commons. The Commons is a space on campus located in the Evans Library for academic success, community building, and a sense of belonging. The Commons through the summer even is a bit quiet on campus, but students are still enjoying and receiving support services and tutoring at the Commons. The Office of Student Involvement is partnering with our EOP and TRIO Quest programs, as well as other affinity groups on campus to plan summer and early fall 2023 orientation programming for new students. Accessibility services and alternate testing. The Alternate Testing Center received a redecoration. Staff member Beth Carpenter, working with Robin DeVito, created an attractive and inviting environment and atmosphere. The room offers a small place for aromatherapy, a white noise machine, adaptive technology, and hot tea, with anxiety being the most prominent disability. It's important to create a relaxing environment, which Beth did so well by paying attention to color, chairs, and overall aesthetics in the room. The Liberty Partnership Program, the LLP students at Amsterdam High School celebrated 8th and 12th grade graduation events with LLP staff before concluding the academic year in June. Angela Midley was hired as a new LLP director, and she started just in time to plan and implement the LLP 6-week summer program at the FMCC campus, running from July 6th to the 2nd week in August. A library report, it's a very detailed report, but I would just say that the collection inventory project is underway. The library staff has undertaken an inventory of the main circulating collection this summer. The last partial inventory was done in April 2021. Last summer, an aggressive weeding of the main collection was completed in conjunction with the development of the Commons. Approximately 7,700 books were removed from the collection. With such an extensive withdrawal of books, an inventory was necessary this summer. You can read more about the library in your report. Behavioral health, workforce, and education and training. Total interest in the program, 68 students, which is fantastic. And right now, there are 25 students enrolled and accepted to the program for fall. The behavioral health labs located in C-136 and C-138 are near complete. There are 16 designated spaces in each room that will fit 2 students each. We are waiting cameras to be installed onto the projects to allow for the Professor Julie Lynn to simultaneously teach both rooms via MS Teams. We anticipate the full completion of these rooms by the end of July. Funds for student peer mentor are being secured, which is anticipated to begin in the 2 week prior to the semester beginning. This will allow the peer mentoring to go through training with our other peer leaders, as well as assist with any pre-semester activity preparation. The students will be able to serve as tutors, increasing the resources for students in the human resource programs. That is the end of my summarizing the report, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? All back. Are there any questions?
Just one comment that with student recruitment right now, the courts have struck down the administration's plan to ease the burden of student debt. And in just a number of days, people will start getting bills back for student debt. The cost of money has skyrocketed over the past couple of years. And I think that those two things combine to promote new awareness for parents and students about what the cost of education is. For the past few years, money has been cheap. Opportunity has been high. The past few years, there's been relief from payments on student debt. All that's just changed. So where we always offer ourselves an affordable option, I think that there's a unique opportunity at this point in time to really punctuate that. When I think that parents and students are going to be taking an increased look at the viability of affording an education, especially for students and are looking at increasing the depth and additional student income. I just encourage the administration to. Well, I'm sure they're thinking about that already, but
What I was gonna say, we have actually rolled out a campaign, a digital campaign specifically targeted at discussing the cost of education and in addition to digital, there's also there's some billboards out.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. The billboards and.
Yeah, they're in the packet. They're doing an amazing job. They're out there, absolutely out there, which is great.
they're good. And I think we've taken a similar approach before. We've shown the economics of community college as opposed to a four-year institution. And I think, the opportunity now has a little bit of a unique spin.
Yeah.
And that maybe at least in social media, we should be talking about whether it's blogging about the changes that are coming ahead, or whether it's some social media targeted advertising that really kind of points out the cost of money as much as anything else and the burden on families. May be a good time, especially with fall approaching.
Well, they're doing a ton of social media. They're answering all kinds of questions. I mean, they're really they're out there. You know, the whole Amsterdam thing was a big deal because tons of people and they were all over the place, which is really wonderful. They do a really great job. Thank you.
There's Lexington and Liberty have offered to partner with us as far as advertising this program. I think that's great.
Yes. It is.
Nice.
Okay, no more questions, we'll move on. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So, Mr. Van, thank you. Mr. Van Bladel is not able to join us this evening. In his report, he references some of the recent Supreme Court decisions that have come out that change the landscape in terms of higher education. It isn't necessarily going to have a dramatic impact on us as a company admissions institution, for example, but I think the concern is that this extends beyond just the admissions decisions. And yesterday, the chancellor held a special meeting with college presidents, chief diversity officers to talk about rulings and what we need to guard against. And I think also to kind of calm down some of the immediate hysteria that comes with a change such as this, that, no, doesn't mean you can't have a Black student union on campus or, Peoples of the World Club. That's not what it means. And say that's where we're heading, that isn't certainly the case yet, and we should continue to do business as we normally do, but also just be aware of some of the changing landscape. So, aside from that, it's summer, so the DEI committee doesn't basis, and so looking forward to the fall.
Any questions? No? We'll move on to accreditation with Dr. Treppenmiller again.
The one item of note that I'll pick on accreditation is that our Middle States liaison, Dr. Hawk, who some of you had the opportunity to meet with, has resigned.
Oh.
And so he will no longer be with the commission, and the commission is currently looking to reassign the institution. that's up to them. The good news for us is our self-study design was approved prior to his departure, so we're not expecting any sort of delays as we move forward with the self-study this year. That's it.
Any questions? We have to get some more people.
Yeah, but
We'll move on to personnel. I'll do first ones. I'll do first. Staff addition, transfer, promotions, retrenchments, resignations, and or retirements. Angela. Kelly Mitchley. Started on June 20th as LPP Program Director. She has a master's in U.S. History from University of Albany, a bachelor's in history from SUNY Classic. Angela worked at the New York State Department of Education for several years as an associate in continuing education. She previously worked for FMCC as an Amsterdam Literacy Zone Coordinator and adult education instructor, as well as a history adjunct at Empire State College. Connie Grant resigned as Human Resource Manager. Gotta get more people. Dr. Jacqueline Smith resigned as Associate Provost of Academic and Student Affairs, effective August 11th, 2023. She'll be missed. And Dr. Trecker Miller has already gone through some of these vacancies. We also have vacancies in buildings and grounds, custodian, full-time, search in progress, coordinator of accessibility, counseling and alternative testing services, full-time, search in progress, principal account clerk, financial aid, full-time, LPP specialist, full-time and grant funded, search in progress. Includes my report. Are there any questions? If not, we'll move on to policy with trustee,
Here.
Perry. Trustee Perry. Any other business to be brought forward tonight? If not, there's no executive session.
executive session or no?
No executive session.
Okay,
So I'll entertain,
I'm sorry.
Did you have a meeting to discuss it?
No, I was just wondering.
then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded by trustee Peck, seconded by trustee Weston. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.